6 days after the biggest stock market debut in history, Elon Musk spent $60 billion on a tool that writes code. He paid in stock, no cash, zero. And his company got more valuable the same day. Wall Street called the price insane. They've got it backwards. This might be the smartest, cheapest deal Musk has ever made. Here's why.
Let's set the scene fast. In February of 2026, Musk folded his AI company into SpaceX. One roof. Rockets and artificial intelligence under the same business. Then, last week, SpaceX went public. The offering raised more than $80 billion and valued the company at over $2 trillion. The single largest debut the market has ever seen. The stock kept climbing. 3 straight days of gains. And then, on June 16th, the announcement. SpaceX is buying Cursor. The price tag? $60 billion. Every cent of it paid in SpaceX shares. If you have never heard of Cursor, here is all you need to know. It is an editor that writes, fixes, and reviews software using artificial intelligence. More than 1 million developers open it every single day. Over half of the 500 biggest companies in America use it. So the obvious question is the one everybody is asking. Why would a rocket company pay $60 billion for a coding app? Here is the thing most people missed. SpaceX did not buy a coding app. It bought 3 things that money almost never gets you all at once. Number 1, distribution. Musk already had the hard parts of artificial intelligence. He had a giant supercomputer called Colossus. He had his own model. What he did not have was a product people actually use, something sticky, something opened daily. Building that from scratch takes years. Instead, he bought it. Overnight, SpaceX walked into the daily workflow of more than 1 million developers and the engineering teams at most of the Fortune 500. You cannot build that kind of reach quickly. You can only buy it. Number 2, and this is the real prize, data. Every time a developer accepts a suggestion, rejects one, or rewrites a function, that is a signal, a tiny lesson. Multiply that by 1 million developers, every hour, every day. That is the single best training data for a coding model on planet Earth, and it cannot be bought on the open market. You can only get it by owning the product people type into. So Musk is not just buying users, he is buying a machine that makes his artificial intelligence smarter every single day. Number 3, total vertical integration. This is the Tesla playbook, pointed at artificial intelligence. Think about what SpaceX now controls, top to bottom. The energy, the data centers, the supercomputer, the model, the product, the customers, and through Starlink, even the internet connection that delivers it. Nobody else owns the entire chain, not one competitor. And here's the part almost nobody is talking about. In its public filing, SpaceX described a strategy it calls macro-hard. The goal is an army of artificial intelligence agents that can help design, test, and assemble future starships, almost on their own. Cursor's agents are the starting point for exactly that. So, read that again. SpaceX may have just bought the tooling for its own missions to Mars and disguised it as a software acquisition. That is why people are calling this genius, but genius does not mean cheap. So let's talk about the price, because this is where it gets wild. $60 billion sounds like a fortune, and on its own it is. But it is the wrong number to focus on. Let me show you the math that changes everything. First, he did not spend a single dollar in cash. The whole deal was paid in SpaceX stock. The company's bank account did not move. He printed the currency he paid with. Second, the deal barely dented the company. At a valuation north of $2 trillion, $60 billion is a rounding error. The whole acquisition came out to about 3.5% of the company. 3.5% to buy a category leader. Third, the market handed him a discount on announcement day. The moment the news broke, SpaceX stock jumped about 16%. For a few hours, it became one of the most valuable companies in the entire country. The acquisition created more value than it cost. the deal paid for itself before lunch. Read that one more time. The deal paid for itself the same day it was announced. Fourth, look at what Cursor is actually worth. Cursor's revenue is exploding. It crossed $1 billion in annual revenue late last year. By this spring, it had doubled to over $2 billion, and the company expects to finish the year at a run rate north of $6 billion. So, Musk paid $60 billion for a business racing towards $6 billion a year, growing faster than almost any software company in history. For comparison, Slack took 7 years to reach its first billion. Cursor did it in about 18 months. Fifth, he had a cheaper option, and he turned it down on purpose. Back in April, SpaceX held a choice: pay $60 billion to own Cursor outright, or pay $10 billion to just partner with it. Renting at $10 billion a year hits $60 billion in 6 years anyway, and at the end of that, you own nothing. Musk chose to own the asset while it was still cheap. And here's the historical echo. In 2018, Microsoft bought GitHub for $7.5 billion. People said it was too much. Today, it is considered one of the greatest acquisitions in tech history. Cursor, at $60 billion, in the age of artificial intelligence, is that same bet, scaled up for a much bigger game. So when you add it all up, no cash, 3.5% of the company, value created on day one, a business tripling every year. That is not an overpay. That is a steal.
Now, if this were a perfect deal, it would be boring, and it is not perfect. So let me play the other side, because the risks are real. Risk 1. The competition is brutal. Cursor is not running away with this market. A year ago, it held about 41% of the category. By this spring, that had slipped to roughly 26%. The reason? Anthropic's Claude code came in fast and took a huge bite. By early this year, Claude code was pulling in over $2.5 billion a year on its own. So Musk is buying a leader that is actively losing ground. The bet only works if SpaceX can reverse that slide. Risk 2. Cursor barely makes money. For a long time, the product cost more to run than it earned. Almost all of its revenue was eaten alive by the cost of computing power. The good news for Musk? He owns a giant supercomputer. So this weakness might actually be the reason the deal makes sense. He can feed Cursor cheap compute that no one else can match. Risk 3. The day a deal closes, incentives change. Right now, Cursor lets developers pick whichever artificial intelligence model they want. After this deal closes, there is pressure to push Musk's own model instead. That is good for SpaceX. It is not always good for the developer. And if users feel pushed, some of them walk. So, this is not a sure thing. It is a high-stakes bet, but that is exactly what makes it worth watching.
So step back and look at what just happened. For 20 years, SpaceX was a rocket company, the symbol of a new space age. Reusable rockets, a satellite network around the whole planet, the dream of Mars. But the future of this company will not be decided by rockets alone. With one move, SpaceX told the world it intends to be a serious player in artificial intelligence, not a follower. A contender against the biggest names in the field, and it did it the way Musk always does, vertically, owning the whole stack, from the power plant to the keyboard. The headline said $60 billion, but what SpaceX actually bought was distribution, data, and a head start on the future of building everything. Maybe even the future of building rockets themselves. That is why I think, years from now, we will not remember this as the deal Musk overpaid for. We will remember it as the day a rocket company quietly became an artificial intelligence empire. So here is my question for you. Genius or gamble? Tell me in the comments which side you land on.